So we're going to start with the first track, Red River.
Yeah.
That was the first track I wrote for this EP, super stripped down. I wrote it on my Fender Derby resonator, and I had it in like an open C tuning. And
yeah, I remember there was this real like metallic quality about the demo that you brought to us, with like the slide being metal and everything, kind of the resonator, and it had this kind of like metallic-y vibe to it, and almost like industrial vibe to it. It was very cool. It's
cool and like swampy, and I'm a fan of playing slide, so I really wanted this EP to have at least one tune with like that sort of vibe in it. Yeah, and it's super simple. I think of it as a prelude in a lot of ways, at least when I first wrote it. Mm-hmm. And we opened the shows with it too.
Wait, so did you know it was going to be a track one?
I knew pretty immediately that it was a track one.
Okay, yeah. It definitely does have that opening, that kind of ominous, and especially with the Bertoia sculpture, like that just kind of brings us into this very ominous mood, and that kind of droniness of that song really kind of starts to draw you in. I think it is a really cool track one.
It's cool. It's definitely got a vibe, and it was the first one I wrote, and it just it was one of those like 5-minute tunes. It kind of came out, and like, oh, there's a really chorus, and those are like kind of sort of verses, but it's a vibe, and I wanted it to feel a little disjointed and uneasy, and I think with including the Synambian, I also knew right away, like I wanted some sort of really cool intro to just kind of have everybody have that big like inhale before the song comes in and take it in. And cause I don't know, it's a very, I think really with all the tunes in a certain way on this EP, they all really paint a picture, and they all paint a very different picture. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I knew with this tune, I wanted to open with this just because of the vibe it sets, and how everyone really starts to seep in and creep in their ways. I think it's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
Did you kind of work backwards from the what I consider the climax of that song, about like 2 minutes in, when like the band really starts driving and it's instrumental for a little while? Did you like know you were going to hit that section from the jump, or did it just kind of like flow, and then you hit a certain point and you were like, and now we're just going to do a 2-minute instrumental?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's totally what it was, because I had the beginning, because that interval I thought was really, really interesting. I'm like, it's like super weird, and like, again, like that unease. That was a big, big thematic thing with this song, was that unease. And and I'm like, okay, I feel like that's the grounding part of that song, is when that riff comes in.
Well, yeah, that's my point. It's like the whole thing is kind of like, it's very watery and tense up until that point. You're kind of like, what the fuck am I listening to? Until you get to that point.
Right.
So I was curious if like maybe that was like just a cool riff you found, and you were like, let me find a way to get into this, or it just kind of showed itself to you once you got to that point.
It's a trip, like that unease led to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was weird.
But
it was weird.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Lyrically though, like the song is obviously text painting very literally in some cases, about like the these voices in your head, and the like lack of control,
right?
So like, did that theme lyrically already exist by the time you were coming up with these instrumental things, or was it the opposite? You felt this tension, and it kind of lent itself to this lyrical idea?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think Red River, immediately when I was playing the riff, like that just kept coming back. Red River, Red River. I'm like, okay, but what's the story behind these words? So I'm thinking, okay, I read Send Me to My Hallowed Grave. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a dark song. All right, we're gonna go with it. Okay, and I've always really liked the Odyssey and the Iliad by Homer. I love like the story in that, and the way, just how the text is. It's just so beautifully written, and just the imagery of it. And I'm like, all right, well, let's go with this theme. And I picked that theme, and let's see where this story goes. And thinking if I was one of those sailors on that ship, and what this would be like they've been through war, and they've killed all these men, and they've seen all these things, and you're in this space of like, God, just I've done all this horrible stuff, just I want to die.
I think the percussion and the drums really set that up too. That's almost kind of like the beginning conflict. I was sort of wondering, actually, if you could talk about when you developed the percussive elements that kind of like changed everything.
I feel like I know where this question is going, and absolutely not.
Okay. Fun. All right. Cool. Never mind then.
No, and sometimes it's easier to see those things after the fact, in my experience. You know, like if I was paying attention to that in the moment, it might not have come out the same way. But because it was just clear the song was trying to go in this direction, it just became obvious, like, what the part had to be. You know what I mean? I honestly never paid attention to the lyrics until we were, like, mixing it. You know?
Yeah.
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 But I think one of the cool things that we did too is we brought that siren-y element in, and I think you got to mention Jess and Phoebe just killed it in those vocals.
I did this, and they maybe knew that I was trying to do this, but I'm gonna like totally state it that this was absolutely part of my game plan. You guys know like what a planner I am and how like incredibly planned this whole EP was, like to the day, like the list and all that stuff. But I wanted them to come in. Jess has such a particular kind of voice, and Phoebe has such a particular kind of voice, and they're so beautiful in their own ways, and the way that just I am such an admirer of both of their voices so incredibly. Just I love the way each of them sing, and I wanted them to come in. I did not want to tell them what to do, and I usually like to have kind of do this and like do this, but I didn't want to give them a lot of direction. Because the song doesn't, at least like the Sirens, which I want you to talk about too, and that theme, which I think is just so freaking cool. I wanted that unease in the way that they were singing too. I wanted them to be like they're confident, like the confidence exudes in how they sing, but I wanted a little bit of that unease to come through and like, okay, pretend you're a siren, go.
Yeah, I think it sort of draws you into that part a lot more too, and it kind of makes you believe that they're almost like trying to play that innocent siren while they're like working on snatching the sailors from this ship, which I think is cool. And when you brought that idea to us, I remember we talked a lot about, you know, taking certain elements from other songs. Like that one we definitely stole from Walk on the Wild Side. We took that element of like the sirens starting out very far away and like to the sides of the recording and with a lot of reverb, and then rather than just bringing them in for each chorus, we actually bring them in progressively as the song goes until they're kind of like right next to you just before that moment the band hits, and it just kind of launches into that instrumental like hit.
That's great.
Yeah, that was so a really fun element to kind of play with, so we're trying to kind of draw that together in the sound of the recording too.
Talk a little bit more about that as far as the mixing process with you guys and how you approach this.
I mean, this definitely was an interesting song to mix for me. You know, there's a lot of elements, and we wanted to give everything its sort of moment while keeping this sort of general sort of swell that the song kind of had, this natural kind of rhythm and breath that the song had. So we kind of just found those elements and just brought them in as we could to kind of like ornament this very industrial, very droning, you know, like oars on a ship kind of rowing foundation. So, you know, when we thought about that, we were kind of like, you know, layering the sonic elements that way too. And so I think there's this kind of really nice opposition between like what the band does in certain moments when they get big and small, and trying to follow that. And then also bringing those elements of like the sirens in and the extra like, you know, the extra noises and things that were just sort of meant to like give us a little bit of creepy vibe.
I gotta say, like, one of my favorite parts is the first time Matt is introduced in the song, and it's almost like that harmonica, like it's a scream. Yeah. It's so damn cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that part a lot.
Matt, I remember we weren't really sure what Matt's part was going to be right away, and when he kind of came in with those sort of like screamy, drony things, it was just kind of one of those magical moments where it's like, yeah, he gets this song too.
So good.
I love that Matt's not afraid to throw out an idea, you know, like
yeah.
He there's definitely a lot of pieces of his performance that if we isolated it, I'm sure he would not be too proud of. You know what I mean? But he understood the totality of the song and what needed to be done, and wasn't afraid to take risks. And for his specific role in this ensemble, that was essential, you know.
Absolutely.
Because it's such a, you know, it's this core kind of band sound where there's the five of us, I guess, that are kind of holding down these very integral parts the whole time. And he gets to be this little little variable along with the backgrounds and other things that we add in after the fact. But like he was key during the recording process for adding that element of improvisation and spontaneity that some of the rest of us couldn't get away with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Because like there wasn't really like, I mean, I'll just speak from a drummer's perspective. Like that's a lot of pressure doing a full band setup like that, where it's like not very easy to go back and fix something if I fucked it up. So
yes,
like we would have, you know, you're not going to capture that same energy again.
Right.
So it's more important to obviously fulfill the role that you need to do so that everybody else can do their job. But then also push it that little extra bit of the way, because you're not going to get that moment ever again.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Good time.
Yeah.
And we knew that. I think all of us going in, like, okay, we got one day at Sunset still to make this happen.
Right.
And I think everyone just did such an incredible job. I'm so incredibly grateful to all of you guys. Like,
I'm glad that we did it that way too, because
too.
I think we really captured something that band does really well, which is kind of like working together, listening together, kind of reacting to each other. And like you said, having that one little element of spontaneity that we can kind of react to, but while we had these very specific parts, especially with Red River, that we had to kind of keep a little bit more.